What does world-class real estate look like to you?
Try to combine old-fashioned traditional estate agent values, but with all the modern tech that can help you move that forward.
Excellent communication is at the heart of what they do.
Great real estate looks like strong leadership.
Consistency.
This episode is sponsored by Iceberg Digital.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. As ever, these things have not changed. My name is Worrall. I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth. How are you, mate?
I'm all good. You're beaming in from space or a hotel room?
Yeah, hotel room. So the Leicester Marriott, the well-travelled Leicester Marriott that you are well aware of. We've got Mastermind today. You're not here, unfortunately, but we've got an hour till we kick off. So this isn't going to be the world's longest episode because I don't want to be late for Sir Stephen Brown and everyone else in the team.
Yeah. Well, no. I hope it's a good day and say hello to everyone. It was pretty much for me. You said, "How am I?" I'll say it's as close to a perfect week as I could have had last week, to be honest.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Had my birthday in the middle of it. Turned 42, believe it or not. I know I don't look 42.
I thought you were 41. Actually, I thought it was 40.
Well, I was on the Wednesday, and then and then it changed. But no, I always have this thing where on my birthday, since I started running from lockdown the last 3 years, I've had this thing where trying to be better, not older, is kind of the mantra that I've adapted to it. And fortunately, it normally falls obviously 5 out of 7 times in the week. And it did. It fell on a Thursday. The missus went to work. The kids were at school. Both of the kids at school now. And I had this thing, can I beat a PB on my birthday? Because then it's my whole thing of, right, I'm better than I was last year, effectively. The only problem is I'm not fast over short distance at the moment, and all of the short ones were too quick for me. So I had to go for a big one, and it was the 50K. So, yeah, I went out on my own, found this little patch of land that was pretty flat and just did 5K doggies 10 times over and smashed my 50K PB by 35 minutes. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, properly took some time off of it. So that was pretty cool. Got spoiled on my birthday as well. Had the Neg Awards on the Friday, which we can touch on in a minute as well. Had some fun out in London over the weekend. Did 2 shows, one in London, one in Bournemouth, one with the kids, one without the kids. So all around, it was a good week. And the budget, let's touch on that because the budget was a nice little treat as well on the Wednesday, I thought. What did you think of it overall?
I think it was right out of the Donald Trump playbook of scare everyone with what I'm going to do. And then actually, when it's a little bit bad, it's nowhere near as bad as everyone feared. I thought that for property, we came off very well.
Yeah.
Particularly if I talk, and I've been talking about it in my local market, naturally, if we talk about that, the effect on that in Preston, it's going to be very, very minimal. There's, we've got a couple of 2 million plus houses, but not very many. I spoke to one of my 2 million plus vendors on the day after, and he said, if I can't afford another 250 quid a month, then there's something wrong, isn't there? In terms of the tax, and that's even if that house gets revalued at that price point. So I thought, all in all.
Did they say, Mark, how they're doing the valuations of them? How they?
No, I'm guessing that's why it doesn't come in for a couple of years, because they're going to have to try and figure that out, aren't they? Because that is a serious job.
It'd be
one of my developers has been talking to me about that. He builds quite big houses, and he said, how are they going to do it? There's not enough Rick surveyors out there to do it, and then everyone's going to appeal it, and that is a big job that is going to be really hard for people to do. And maybe they won't do it up north. In all seriousness, maybe because it is such a big job, maybe it will be almost a London tax. I don't know. We'll see. I think it could have been a lot worse. And actually, I actually sat and watched it, and whilst I think they're just like petty little children throwing mud at each other, I thought particularly the first part with the talk of investment and all of that, I thought it was pretty positive. And yeah, okay, there's more tax. We knew there was going to be more tax.
Mm-hmm.
The car's going to cost me another 500 quid a year probably. It's not the end of the world. I would much rather pay 500 quid than have the arse drop out the market because they changed stamp duty overnight. So yeah, all in all, I think pretty positive. And I think we've actually already seen a little bit of activity, particularly in our premium homes. And it didn't take very much because it was really quiet in the couple of weeks leading up to the budget. So just a few new inquiries, a few buyers who've been sitting and waiting. I think there's going to be a little bit of pent up demand in January. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do wonder on the valuations whether, going back to that point, because I think it's not till 2028 anyway.
Yeah.
But I do wonder whether they just do a desktop, and then if you don't agree with the desktop valuation, you as the homeowner can pay for a RICS survey, supply it, and upload it to kind of conflict it. I would imagine that's how they'll do it, because, I mean, if they want RICS surveyors, speak to Survey Network, plug. If you're listening, Rachel, there's an option there to speak to us. But yeah, if you're not, then I think that's maybe how they do it. But it's interesting what you say about talking to your client there, because I looked at 20EA yesterday, actually, because I'm doing a podcast with two of the agents that operate in Wokingham. Wokingham is a old money market town, quite affluent around this area, quite desirable. And it's a slightly higher price, but it's not like Millionaires Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay. So for us around here, the average house price is about 500 grand, or maybe 450. In Wokingham, maybe it's 550. So, it's kind of 10% above the rest, but it's not 25% above the rest. It's not Ascot Premium or something like that. But I looked at the listings over the last 6 weeks compared to this time last year. And for the country, it's 3.5% down.
Yeah.
This week versus week, 6 weeks versus 6 weeks leading up to the budget. But for Wokingham and a couple of other towns like that, which are called old money towns, traditional towns, it was 10%, just over 10% down. So it'd be interesting to see if you operate in that type of market, whether they were the people that were just, holding off because it would have impacted them the most. So I do think there'll be an influx of listings for those areas. Now they kind of go, all right, we're all 2% poorer, because of obviously everyone's getting taxed 2% everywhere, but that's not the end of the world. Like you said, the fear factor was worse than that, and everyone just kind of carries on as usual. So I thought that Wednesday was good. We had all the agents in there, and we were all geared up for, big reporter style kind of fallout of it. We watched it live, and we were all sat there going, for half an hour, she hasn't really said anything, has she? She's just.
we were saying, where's the sting in this tale?
Yeah,
like that's what. And then when she was we think she's finished. She's going to sit down. That's exactly what we were like when we were watching it.
It blows my mind though. I mean, if you watch it, it blows my mind. It's like a kids. It's like worse than like a problematic kids' school assembly. When are they going to grow up? These people.
Pathetic. That's exactly what I don't know whether you noticed. That's exactly what I said before. It is just pathetic. Yeah. And the speaker having to intervene. I mean, what? Yeah, it blows my mind. Can you imagine if we acted like that in a business meeting when we had our team in the room, or if someone acted like that if they had a disagreement? I don't get really into politics, and that's probably one of the reasons why. And I just think you watch that and you think, I mean, you're never going to attract a high level of person into that environment, are you? Because why would you? If someone said to you, having watched that, do you want to go and be a local MP? I'm like, nah, you're all right.
Yeah.
Why would I want to get involved with that? Childlike behaviour.
It just, when you see high performance and you see high performing teams or groups or training rooms, with good energy, looking well, recharged, fit, healthy, on the ball, respectful as well to each other, polite. You see that group of people. That is the opposite of what you see in there. It's the opposite of a high performance team. But anyway, if they're still listening to that part, apologies, but it's true. Anyway, that was it from the budget, really. That was nothing to report, which, I think it would be interesting to see now what happens, because what we also saw in November for our particular group was there was probably about half the amount of listings that we would normally put live in November. but we sold 157% of what we listed, because obviously listings were down, but sales were still the same. There was actually no change in units sold in a comparison to this time last year. So that means the demand is there, right? And that kind of resonates across the country as well. I think the country was over 80% sale agreed from listings in November.
Yeah, we noticed it in the
positive.
listings. It was definitely the listing side of it, and obviously you get all your right move alerts and you watch what's happening in the market. Oh, sorry, and nobody was listing, serious numbers in our area. So that's the bit that people are. Will just sit and wait. And I've since I said, the good thing about the budget is it's an opportunity to speak to people. I've already had those conversations straight after. Was it Wednesday? So put a few clients on Thursday. Those are instructions that are coming. Whether it's before Christmas or after, that was just a conversation that we had. But I think that in terms of speaking to clients, if you haven't done, you've absolutely got to do that. People will have done now. This will be coming out 2 weeks after the budget. I hope they've spoken to the clients and potential clients about it. But it's a really good time to be speaking to people and giving them other options rather than just saying, oh, well, we'll list in January and February. Well, January and February could be a time of high competition, so you could get ahead of it now. The inevitable Rightmove Boxing Day launches are going to be talked about. What's your opinion on that? Because we've been having this conversation in our office quite a lot recently.
Yeah, I mean, I saw there's a guy called Ricky who operates in Stevenage. He did a video in his dressing gown with his Christmas hat on, replicating Boxing Day visually, which we didn't clock straight away. We just thought it was a bit weird that he'd gone on socials with his dressing gown on. Then he explained it and it made sense. He may redo that video because it wasn't clear. It just looked like he'd done a drunk video. But he called it bollocks.
It might pop.
It might pop. I mean, we all saw it. He called it the Boxing Day bollocks bounce or something like that. He's obviously not a fan. But then I've spoke to another avocado partner and they've seen it as a good way to articulate a reason to list on that particular time. Rightmove obviously highlight the fact that it's one of the busiest days of the year in terms of traffic. I think this is where, again, the chasm splits. I'm trying really hard to put my former traditional estate agency hat on and see a good reason for it. But most estate agents, if they do that big Boxing Day launch, are not open until the 2nd or the 5th.
Yeah.
This is wrong, I think, if you're that agent. If you're closed for the next 72 hours after launching, 50% of your month's listings, then what are you doing?
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, because the way that we run the business would just be such that we'll do that and then we'll book the viewings and we've sold. I sold a house a couple of years ago on the 28th on the back of a Boxing Day launch. That house actually had been on the market with another agent for quite a while as well. So we've had success with it. But I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older and getting a little bit more sceptical, but is it one of the busiest days of the year from traffic, or is it just percentage-wise so much busier than Christmas Day that's where the spike comes from? So I think it depends on, as ever, it depends on clients' situations. I think it's a good topic of conversation to be having with a client, because I do think there is a little bit of, well, you can get that early January market before people think of listing, and then you've got a better chance maybe of selling late January, early February, depending on the type of property it is. So I think we should be having that conversation with clients, but it depends on their situation, I think, rather than a one size fits all, because people might start looking on Boxing Day, but in my opinion, they don't really start inquiring until early January.
Because of the way the calendar falls this year, my advice to estate agents out there would be to launch on Friday the 20th. I think that's the most productive day that you can launch those listings. I wouldn't launch on the 26th, especially as, you mentioned, you did a deal on Boxing Day. The house before this house that we lived in, we saw that go live and we viewed it just before Christmas, and we wrapped it up on the 27th of December, and actually bought it between Christmas and New Year and saw it between Christmas and New Year. But I would say the way that most people are going to see the trends kick in is from Friday the 20th. Everyone's off radar. I know people are coming in on the 22nd, the 23rd, or maybe the Friday's the 19th, whatever that Friday is. Everyone's in for 2 days afterwards, the Monday and the Tuesday, and then it's Christmas Eve. I would list on that day because you've got all that activity that's going to happen between coming back in. So it's 10 days worth of getting ahead of the competition, getting ahead of the traffic, and that would be the best advice for the seller. And also, people do scroll Rightmove on Christmas Day sometimes. You know, if you're having a bad day or you're having a really good day, you know, you've outgrown it. But either way, people will be scrolling because they're on their phones a lot more. And for estate agents 10, 12 years ago, we were open the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. Not many agents are now. Yeah. Even the corporates are closed now. So that's a difference as well.
And I think the difference on Boxing Day now versus Boxing Day a few years ago, it's a very noisy day now. So a lot of agents, because Rightmove promoted it, a lot of agents are onto it. You know, it probably is one of the busiest days of the year in terms of listing because people wait. So I think, like I say, it depends on the client, it depends on the property, it depends on your local market. I've had conversations about it with some of my clients, but it just depends whether they're going to be ready to launch. I've, you know, for the last few years, I've been on the laptop launching stuff on Boxing Day. I did it from Lapland last year from memory. So it has worked for us as a business and has worked for clients. If you really hate it, I can see why. If you really love it, I can see why as well. I'm going to sit on that fence, I suppose, with that one. But it's a topic of conversation. But whatever you do, if you are photographing houses in December, please just book it in the diary and re-photograph them in early January. You know, there is nothing worse than seeing a property with a Christmas tree on the market in February, and it is just like such a good opportunity for your competitors just to go, yeah, we'll go and knock that door.
Yeah. I think summary exactly what you said. If you're accessible, launch it on whatever day. Launch it on Christmas Day if you want. As long as you're accessible and you can deal with the inquiries, then cool. You know, just it's a message. It's a PR stunt, isn't it? Ultimately, and totally agree with you. You know, get the seasonal festive photos out. In fact, we were talking about the Halloween, banana images, obviously around Halloween. But some of the avocado guys are already teeing up for a Christmas special, like 10 days, where they're going to make the houses festive, but through nano, so that they've already got the images done non-festive, and they're able to obviously change the transition so that they look the part over Christmas, and then obviously they can flip it instantly. That's the beauty of AI, right? We can do that part of it without having to actually go back, because you can just dress it up as you want to dress it up, and it probably looks better than the client's decorations as well.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting organised for that now, getting on a banana images. Steve Baycock was here last night, and he was saying he's done exactly the same. So I think there's probably quite a few agents that will be doing that, and why not? You know, December is traditionally a quieter month. I want to talk about that a little bit as well. But December is traditionally one of those quieter months in estate agency. So we've got to make our properties stand out. And I think they'll just look really cool on Rightmove. Our Halloween campaign for that, I was saying last night, some of our properties got like 500% uplift in views. It was phenomenally effective. So yeah, I probably need to get some more credits for Nano Banana, because I've been using it for various things socially as well. AI is taking over the world, scaring some of my friends with what we can create with that after a few Christmas drinks over the weekend. So yeah, it's making our life easier in so many ways, but from a marketing perspective, it's a real opportunity to stand out. So yeah, we're definitely going to be doing that.
Yeah, definitely. No, very, very good indeed. So yeah, calendars are obviously out. Elves are out. Are the elves back in your are they in your house now?
I got a text message from the wife this morning to say our elf, who is named Annie after one of the trucks from Thomas the Tank Engine, and our elf has turned naughty for the first time ever in the last 24 hours, which is no doubt something to do with my 11-year-old now getting involved in placing the elf as well. So yeah, I saw your ChatGPT Facebook post. I was going to steal it actually, because I thought it was a really good idea. But yes, our elf is out, and I do not know what to expect over the next few days.
Yeah, 101 tips from chat for elves. Actually, pretty good, pretty helpful as well, to be fair. There's some good ones in there. Yeah, our elves are definitely out. We have 5 elves and 2 baby elves in our house. They just accumulated over the last 9 years. And then obviously when Lily came along, we had to sort of balance it out. So yeah, there's a lot of elf trouble going on. In fact, one of the funniest ones is we changed our kitchen table, and one year I absolutely obliterated the kitchen table and then blamed it on the elves. Still to this day, they think that's the funniest thing they've ever seen. The kitchen table was smashed. They were like, terrified. Oh my God, they've broken the table. Absolute class. So yeah, we had the Neg Awards. I know you're kind of quite on the fence with conference season and how much you go to, what you don't go to. We spoke about it briefly last year. I'm struggling a little bit with these estate agency kind of conferences over the last year, or events or whatever. I'm really struggling to get some like key value from the speakers. I don't know how you found things, but I'm finding they're getting a little bit familiar and a little bit samey, but also very much geared around the suppliers and feeling a bit sold to from time to time. The Neg Awards, credit where it's due, they tried to do it quite highbrow. They had some good speakers there, but just struggling to get any value from them at the moment. I don't know if have you been to any this year? Have you got any booked in?
Nope. Nope, not been to any, not got any booked in, not got any massive desire to do that. And I often think, we should go and I should step out into that. But what I am really valuing for my personal development at the moment, obviously, I really enjoy doing this. We're here at Mastermind today. I know that the people in the room of our mastermind and Stephen facilitating will give me pages full of takeaways. And from a location perspective and cost perspective as well, in terms of getting down to London, staying in London and all of that sort of thing, it just doesn't really excite me. And, I quite like a drink, so, we could go to one of the awards dues and have a good drink, but is that really what I want to do? I can go out and have a drink with my mates, and we're short of time, and I think that's making me probably sound a little bit sceptical, because we went to the Neg Awards a few years ago and had a great. It was a really good event and a nice little shot in the arm. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for it, because I think sometimes if you've got certain team members that you could put forward, or you could use it as a real motivating thing, then there's definitely a place for it. And I know Michelle from Mastermind absolutely loves the EA Masters for obvious reasons, and it's a real part of the business. But our business doesn't really play to those circles. I don't think the consumer understands, cares about the awards and the conferences. I've yet to see a speaker at on the list of conference people that I thought, great, that'd be amazing to see. And I think Josh Fegan was at the kerfuffle one. That was the most tempting one, I think, from my perspective, because
that one actually was very, very good, to be fair. There was good speakers. There was good value from Josh. There was good value from Simon Gates, Toby Martin, and then a phenomenal speaker at the end. And what I loved about that is they took speakers. They almost had like, if you want to talk industry stuff, go in this room. If you want outside of industry stuff, go to this room. And I think that's what more of them need to do, is they need to go outside of the industry to really get value. I've done a mortgage conference recently, a couple of other bits as well in the estate planning world, and actually the best value that we can get is to really get outside of the industry and start to get some people to come into our industry and talk to us. And we had our group meet the other day, and I had a guy called Jack come in, who's the fastest Brit to run across Australia, and he's turned himself into a motivational speaker. And I know Jack and I know the story, but actually he held our room, which is a hard room to hold, for a solid hour. He got booked for a couple of other things straight off the back of it, and everyone said how good it was. And it was just a good motivator at a time that we needed it, pre-budget. And I could see the impact it had. And that's an external speaker that's got no relevance to property. And that's what they needed, because we talk property all day, every day. But then the Neg Awards, the conference, there was some interesting stuff in there. I struggled to keep attention, if I'm honest, in the room. But actually, for us, we had 10 of the group came down. It was really, really good to get everyone together, some key agents. Could we have done that for less than a £4.5 table. Yeah, probably could have gone to Nando's to get everyone together, but it was nice. It was a really nice kind of day, and we were very, very proud that I think we're probably the only agency to win an award at the Neg Awards 3 years in a row, and to be, effectively it's the award for the best self-employed brokerage, but to be called that by the Negotiator Awards 3 years running now is quite special for us. Like year 2, we were thinking we're not going to win it back to back, and then we did. And then we were like, there's no way we're going to win it 3 years in a row, and we did. And I think hard work, from the submission, good culture, good industry, great Google reviews was mentioned, a premium kind of feel, the judges said as well. And I was really proud of that. It was a really nice kind of day after my birthday, really nice end to that kind of
good week.
Really good. Yeah. I was really proud to kind of get up there on stage and do that for 3 years in a row. And we've had some tough competition we've been up against. I think Nested came second, EXP Agent third, but there's been Preston Baker in there. There's been some really good agents over the 3 years. So it was pretty cool to win that 3 years in a row. So it was a nice kind of end to the evening, if you like.
And that, as a industry-facing award, is probably more valuable than a client-facing award, because that's what that is, right? So that's a recruitment. Award, effectively. So you can, say to any new recruits, or they can see it and think, right, let's go and have a look at that. So I can definitely see the value in that, and I think there is probably more value in these things B2B than B2C. Sometimes. So yeah, but it's great to hear that you had a bit of time out of the office, because one of the things I was going to say that, I've been talking to Rachel about at the moment is when we are a little bit quieter in December, we've got to take time out of the office for two reasons, in my opinion. One, to plan. So we're now big into planning for next year. And another, to just take the time to, rest, recuperate and focus on the future. And rather than just in the estate agency, it is, the hamster wheel. December is a great time to step off from a planning perspective. Yes, absolutely, completely crucial. Make sure you're doing that, but also from a personal perspective to say, right, okay, my phone isn't ringing off the hook, so I'm gonna go and take an hour and go for a walk, or gonna go and pick the kids up, or whatever it might be. So I think it's really important that when you've got the opportunity to take the time in December, that you do use it. And you talked about closing over Christmas and what have you. One of our team was talking about, well, should we just come in between? I was like, nope, no chance, absolutely not. It's the only time of year where we can shut off and and everybody can go home and not think about work.
Clients are expecting it as well. Clients now, especially since lockdown, a couple of years on, they're not expecting people to be contactable. They're not expecting to have anyone there. You're available on your WhatsApp with your key clients, aren't you? Or email. You might flick and check your email, here or there. If anything urgent comes in, you'll be aware of it and you can handle it. That's the beauty of everything's mobile now. You sort of don't need that premises over that period of time to do that. And I think, like you say, getting out of the office, one of the reasons I'm not at Mastermind today is November. I was just here, there, and everywhere. I didn't feel like I had a single day sat at my desk or sat here in my home office actually getting some productive work done. So in December, I've kind of said to myself, I need to be getting proactive, getting the year finished off. I've got a really exciting training session booked in with 12 of the agents on Thursday. I'm just looking forward to that productive, proactive stuff. We've got 9 agents signed up on letter of intent to launch over the next couple of months, and obviously I owe it to them to give them my full attention as well and make sure their launch goes well between now and the end of Q1. So there's a lot to do, and sometimes when you're out of the office, that hamster wheel carries on, and then you've got a double day to do basically. So yeah, I totally agree. Planning, in fact, I said to the other shareholders yesterday, we need a good day out of office or in the new training room to really get stuck into what the plan is for next year. Proper profit review, what are we doing with progression, and what are we doing with our spend, and what are we doing with our campaigns basically. So yeah,
we had our first day of that last week, and we've got another one booked in next week. And so it was actually last Wednesday when the budget was on. So we started doing the planning, and then we were like, it's going to depend on this budget, isn't it? And then anyway, the budget came along, and we smashed through everything that we were supposed to do on the agenda in the afternoon. Was the feel good factor was running. The plan was then cemented and in place, and now it means that next week we can, update on the implementation of that plan, and it feels like that's a really good way to start the year. And it's something that we've done over the last couple of years, not always as a business by any stretch of the imagination, but we've done it over the last couple of years, and it does not make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very good to leave that meeting or leave that session, workshop, planning, whatever you want to call it, and feel like, right, we've really achieved something here that we can now drive the ship on. And that's the key part of it, isn't it? It gives you a direction and a plan of action. And, it's the same in anything in life, where I talk about at the start of the podcast, that 50K, I used chat to tell me what pace I needed to be. I programmed it into my Garmin Connect. So every time I dropped below 7:45 minute mile pace, it shouted at me and told me I was going too slow. And these are all the features that we've now got to work with, that we just didn't have before. And it's the same with the planning. What's the target? And then what's the reminder? And that was the same for me with that 50K, and the same analogy we use here. I knew the target, I knew the pace, I knew what I had to do from fueling, and I had someone shouting at me every time I dropped below it, which was horrible in the last 4 miles. But it got me through, and like I say, it got 35 minutes off the PB. If I hadn't have done the chat prep and I'd just gone aimlessly to run a 50K, I'm not running it that fast. I'm not doing a sub 4 hour. That's for sure.
I consider it like bowling, something like that. You've got your planning and your reminders are like your bumpers, and how much easier is it to bowl well if you've got the bumpers? We don't do it as adults, hopefully, because we like to think that we don't need them. But actually, if you are maturing as a kid, they always have the bumpers up. And that, your Garmin and your chat plan, that forms the bumpers, so that if you're going off track, bang, it just pops you back in. It's a really good way, actually, to think about the planning and to think how you can put those bumpers up to make sure that the business performs better next year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a guy that I ran with once that I was chatting to, and he said, I was struggling with cramp at the time, and he said, it's like a box of matches in a race. And it's the same thing for us in terms of stepping out of the office and energy levels and having some rest, because throughout the year as estate agents it is intense. But you think of your year as you've got one box of matches with 20 matches in it. Every time you push it too hard, or you have to do a difficult meeting, or you've got to change direction, you burn a match, and you've only got 20. Sometimes you need a bit of rest, because if you use all 20 within the first 6 months, it's going to be a tough back end of the year because you're burnt out. And it's the same thing for that. So nice way to kind of probably finish the podcast with good reflection on the last week of a lot of changes. And we've got some phenomenal guests coming up over the next couple of weeks throughout December. We've pre-recorded with some really good guests, estate agents pretty much being the main. We've got trainers on as well. Stephen's fantastic story, fantastic feedback will come from that, I'm sure. But we've got some really good guests, so definitely listening over the next couple of weeks, because we've set up December like your own podcast advent calendar.
Nice. That is a nice way to end there, Ian. And the guests that we've got coming up, lots of face-to-face conversations, and we always feel that the quality of those just ups a little bit. And more news will be coming out about the book over the next few weeks as well. So really exciting way to end the year, and we hope that people will get loads and loads of value out of, as you call it, little world-class real estate advent. So as you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, or any others for that matter, please share it out on social media, reach out. I'm Mark Worrall. Here's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.